Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to another edition of Crimes of the Week International. Authorities in the Australian state of New South Wales say that they are searching for a group of suspects this week following a terrifying early morning home invasion that left 4 family members hospitalized. The disturbing incident began just after 2 a.m. on January 28th, when the victims, a husband and wife in their 60s and their adult son and daughter, were woken from their sleep by loud noises inside their home in Sydney's Burwood neighborhood. To their horror, they soon realized that the sounds were 4 men who had just broken in and were armed with a crowbar. The family were reportedly attacked by the suspects, who also stole their car keys and a phone before fleeing. After police arrived at the scene, all 4 victims were taken to a hospital. The father of the family is said to have suffered serious injuries to his head, though all of the victims are currently in stable condition. In a strange twist, police now say that they believe the family's terrible ordeal may have been a case of mistaken identity. The full reasoning behind this theory is not clear, though investigators have pointed out that the family had not previously had any interactions with police. Also, despite having their car keys stolen, the attackers did not actually take their car. Neighbors of the victims further state that the area where the crime took place is normally quiet and that they have never heard of anything like this happening here before. At the time of this recording, police are asking for any members of the public who might have information about the case to please come forward. So far, no arrests have been made, and the situation is still under investigation. Representatives from London's Metropolitan Police say that a 30-year-old suspect is dead this week after he was shot by officers during the middle of a dramatic incident in which he allegedly tried to break into a residence armed with a number of weapons. The whole situation began just before 5 a.m. on January 30th, when residents of Bywater Place, located in the city's Rotherhithe district, were awoken by alarming noises in their neighborhood. It sounded like 2 people screaming. In particular, a woman could be heard yelling out for help. After running to their windows to see what was going on, several witnesses say that they saw a man, later identified as 30-year-old Bryce Hodgson, trying to break into the house in question. He was pounding on the front door and appeared to be attempting to force his way inside. Local police were first to arrive at the scene, however they were quickly forced to call in armed backup. The 30-year-old was dressed in a Kevlar vest and was armed with several weapons, including a crossbow, a sword, and a hatchet. By the time armed officers got there, Hodgson had reportedly made his way into the property and was refusing to comply with police commands. Fearing for the safety of those inside the residence, authorities went in after him, firing 2 shots shortly after. Emergency responders attempted to perform life-saving measures on the 30-year-old, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. 2 people inside the home, meanwhile, were treated for minor injuries. At the time of this recording, almost no additional details are available about the situation, including what might have motivated or led up to the disturbing home invasion. According to local news sources, Hodgson was previously charged with stalking involving serious alarm/distress following an incident early last year in which he allegedly entered a woman's bedroom without consent and sent her text messages demanding she open her door. However, it's unclear if these 2 incidents are in any way connected. Neighbors of the 30-year-old described him as a, quote, dark horse who often appeared anxious. They said that he could frequently be found outside his residence smoking cigarettes and marijuana, though was never menacing or aggressive. The situation is still under investigation. Authorities in the Turkish city of Istanbul say that 1 person is dead this week following a horrifying shooting at a Catholic church, one that officials have called a terror attack. According to reports, the incident took place at around 11:40 a.m. on January 28th at the Church of Santa Maria in Istanbul's Büyükdere neighborhood. Worshippers were in the middle of Sunday Mass and were facing the altar of the church when out of nowhere, 2 men wearing black masks and all-black outfits came in through the open doors at the back of the room. They opened fire, hitting a man who had just walked in off the street moments earlier. The suspects then turned and fled as congregants continued to lay on the floor in fear. Sadly, the man who was struck by the gunfire was soon pronounced dead from his injuries. He was later identified as a 52-year-old Turkish national named Tuncer Cihan. In the aftermath of the shooting, the terror group the Islamic State took credit for the deadly incident. It's since been alleged that the attack took place after the group issued a call for supporters to target Christians and Jews in response to the ongoing situation in Gaza. Relatives of the deceased man, however, claim that he was actually a Muslim. Reports differ widely as to why the man was at a Catholic church that day, though most accounts state that he simply walked in off the street and was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Other local reports suggest that those responsible for the attack may have planned to kill more victims, though fled after their gun jammed. Officials in Turkey say that they conducted more than 24 raids in the days following the shooting, and have since arrested more than 47 people in connection with the crime. This apparently includes the actual gunmen, who so far have only been identified as 2 foreign nationals, one of whom is said to be from Russia, the other of whom is said to be from Tajikistan. The situation is still developing. Authorities in the South Korean capital of Seoul say that a well-known politician was briefly hospitalized this week after she was the victim of a disturbing beating attack at the hands of a young teen. According to reports, the situation unfolded at around 5 p.m. on January 25th, when 40-year-old lawmaker Bae Hyun-jin was walking into a building in Seoul's Gangnam district. Bae, a former news anchor who is now a member of parliament for the ruling People Power Party, had just entered the building's lobby when she was approached by the 15-year-old suspect, who ran up behind her. The teen allegedly asked, "Are you Bae Hyun-jin?" before pulling out a rock and striking the 40-year-old in the back of the head. She was hit with the weapon, which has been described as being, quote, the size of an adult man's hand, at least 15 times before bystanders noticed what was happening and rushed to her aid. Bae was hospitalized for multiple days due to lacerations to her head and bleeding caused by the attack, though she is now said to be recovering well. The suspect, meanwhile, is being held under a mental health order. The incident sparked widespread concern across South Korea, especially because of the attack's proximity to a similar violent incident against another high-profile politician just earlier this month. If you'll recall from the January 5th edition of our show, the head of the country's opposition party, Lee Chae-myung, was seriously injured after being stabbed in the neck following a campaign event. While police say that they are still investigating the full circumstances surrounding this week's incident, it appears that unlike the attack on Lee, the motive behind this attack may not have been primarily political. The teen allegedly responsible had previously been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and was reportedly waiting to be admitted into a psychiatric ward at the time of the assault after experiencing another bout of severe depression. Still, authorities say that they remain on high alert as South Korea heads towards national elections in April. At the time of this recording, the 15-year-old suspect remains in custody, and the situation is still developing. A 31-year-old man from Sapporo, Japan, may want to lay off the city's namesake beer for a while after he was arrested following an alleged drunken break-in at a school. According to reports, the whole thing began at around 5:45 a.m. on January 27th, when police were alerted that an alarm had been triggered at a local middle school. They arrived at the scene to find that the glass had been shattered on one of the building's front doors, and when they investigated further, they soon discovered why. The culprit was a 31-year-old man who was found sleeping on the floor in front of the school's staff room. Upon being woken up, the man, who was still clearly intoxicated, attempted to explain his actions. He said that he had been drinking all night in the city's Susukino district and claimed that he thought the school was his home. When he got there and his key wouldn't fit the lock, naturally he assumed it was the door's fault and apparently kicked in the glass so he could go inside. The man was arrested at the scene on suspicion of breaking and entering, as well as property destruction. His name has not been released at this time. Representatives from the Royal Thai Police say that a cash-strapped British man is in hot water this week after he allegedly tried to extort money from his own family through an idiotic fake kidnapping scheme intended to help him extend his holiday. The whole thing began recently when worried family members of 48-year-old Ian Day contacted Interpol saying that they thought he had been kidnapped. The family had been sent a series of distressing images in which Ian appeared to be injured, and when he had spoken to them over FaceTime, he explained that he was being held against his will by 3 men. The alleged kidnappers appeared in the video wearing masks, telling the family that they needed to send money in order to secure Ian's release. Interpol reached out to their law enforcement counterparts in Thailand, who began an investigation. After some searching, they soon found evidence suggesting that Ian was being held at a hotel in the city of Pattaya. Considering the seriousness of the situation and the potential for a violent confrontation, Thai police sent in a special operations team to rescue Ian. Unfortunately, when they arrived at his room, they quickly realized that he wasn't in any real danger. According to reports, after barging into the room, officers discovered Ian partying and using drugs with 3 other people. His supposed captors were actually just his 3 friends, later identified as 50-year-old Frenchman Damien Roche, 36-year-old New Zealander Ben Cooper, and fellow UK citizen 57-year-old Darren Cheeseman. According to local news sources, Ian cooked up the fake kidnapping scheme because he was out of money on his extended vacation. Instead of going home, he allegedly decided he would try and con his family into paying for more holiday time by convincing them that he was being held for ransom. At the time of this recording, all 4 men are apparently facing charges for overstaying their visas. They're also facing drug and weapons charges because their room was apparently full of methamphetamine and guns. The situation is still developing. Authorities in the Brazilian state of Rio Grande do Sul say that a 30-year-old personal trainer and fitness influencer is dead this week after she was allegedly murdered by her bodybuilder husband and her remains were callously dumped outside of her parents' home. According to reports, the tragic situation began sometime on January 26th when family members of Debbie Michel made a heartbreaking discovery. The 30-year-old's body had been wrapped in a red cloth and abandoned on the sidewalk outside of their home in the city of Montenegro. Almost immediately after police were called, attention turned to Debbie's husband, 48-year-old Alexander Gunch. The pair had been married for 10 years, but were currently in the process of separating. Gunch was arrested 2 days later after Debbie's death was officially ruled a homicide. Once in custody, the 48-year-old allegedly offered a disturbing confession. Gunch told investigators that on January 26th, he and Debbie had gotten into an argument, one that had eventually turned physical. In the heat of the moment, he picked her up by the neck and threw her against a wardrobe. Soon after, Debbie started feeling extremely sick. Gunch explained that he put his wife in their car and started driving to the hospital. However, on the way, he realized that she had died. Panicked, he wrapped up her remains and dumped them at her parents' house. Debbie's loved ones say that they weren't aware of any physical abuse in the couple's relationship prior to the murder, but that Debbie was trying to move on with her life after she and Gunch decided to separate. Sadly, she was supposed to move into her own apartment just the day after she was killed. Those that knew the 30-year-old described her as passionate about health and fitness and said that she loved what she did. She had been working as a personal trainer since 2011 and also shared videos filled with knowledge and advice for aspiring bodybuilders on social media. At the time of this recording, Alexander Gunch remains in custody. Police say that they are still investigating, and it is unclear if he is yet facing formal charges. Authorities in Japan's Kanagawa prefecture say that a nearly 50-year-old mystery may have come to a frustrating end this week after a fugitive on the run for decades finally revealed himself, only to die less than a week later. According to reports, the man in question, Satoshi Kirishima, has been wanted ever since the mid-1970s when he was part of a left-wing terror group called the East Asia Anti-Japan Armed Front. The militant organization was apparently created with the goal of violently opposing what it saw as the military and commercial expansion of Japan in East Asia before and after the Second World War, and was responsible for a series of infamous bombings that targeted large Japanese companies. The most deadly of these incidents reportedly happened in 1974, when the terror group bombed the headquarters of Mitsubishi Heavy Industries in central Tokyo. The attack killed 8 people and injured 165 others. While it's unclear if Kirishima had any involvement in that particular bombing, he was accused of planting and detonating a homemade bomb near an office building in Tokyo's Ginza district in April of 1975. 8 people were arrested following that incident. However, Kirishima managed to flee before being captured. For nearly 50 years, Kirishima reportedly remained a fugitive from justice. Wanted posters featuring his image were circulated throughout the country during this time. However, authorities were never successfully able to locate him. It was theorized that he may have fled overseas, as was the case with some other members of the group who were facing similar charges. That all changed last week, though, on January 25th, when a man claiming to be Kirishima allegedly revealed himself to authorities. At the time, he was at a hospital in Kamakura, where he had reportedly been receiving treatment on and off for about a year under the name Hiroshi Uchida. When interviewed, the now 70-year-old man reportedly told police that he had lived under this same alias ever since going on the run. He went on to become an employee at a building company in Fujisawa, which is also located in Kanagawa Prefecture. He said he managed to stay under the radar by avoiding banks and receiving all of his wages in cash. He never obtained a driver's license or health insurance and had been paying all of his medical bills out of pocket. Kirishima explained that he had finally decided to reveal himself because he was suffering from advanced stomach cancer and knew he didn't have long to live. Specifically, he said, quote, "I want to draw the curtain on my life under my real name." 4 days after speaking with police, Kirishima died in the hospital. While investigators say that they are still conducting DNA tests to confirm that the elderly man really was the fugitive they've been looking for, it appears that so far they are satisfied with his story. They stated that even if Kirishima had lived, he likely would not have faced prison time due to his age and the severity of his illness. The situation is still under investigation. Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a second to give a huge shout out to everyone who has made it this far into the video. Seriously, thank you so much for watching. If you found today's upload interesting and informative, we'd be honored if you'd consider liking and subscribing, as well as hitting the notification bell and selecting all notifications to stay up to date with our latest releases. If you're looking for additional ways to help support the channel, we'd love to have you join us over on Patreon. Patrons get ad-free and early access to all of our content, as well as 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. You can learn more at patreon.com/crimezone, where you'll also find some of the fine folks whose names are currently on screen. All that being said, we understand that not everyone has the means to support financially, and that's totally okay. We appreciate every like, sub, share, and comment that you send our way. Once again, thanks so much everyone, and take care.